Well, I'm delighted to be here, and I've given most of you, if you didn't get one, raise your hand and I can give you one of these sheets, preparing for 2024. I'll put them right here if someone didn't get one. I don't have a prepared speech. That's kind of not necessarily what I do. And the reason for that is because I think you probably have diverse questions or situations, and I want to be able to, as best possible from my knowledge base, address whatever your needs are. So it's nothing prepared. So I will tell you that when I coach, and feel free to get up and get something to eat or drink as we go through this, by all means. I will tell you that we have, as Beth said, we have these peer exchange groups, and they're for key executives and CEOs and CFOs and presidents of companies, and they come together once a month for half a day, and we exchange perspectives. They may have a problem, they may have a conundrum, they may have an issue, but by sharing that, by expressing it, and sharing it, they get other people's perspective on their issues, and it's very helpful to them. So we do that. We also do a lot of executive coaching, one-on-one executive coaching. And then in addition to that, we do executive workshops that are more around team development. All of our work is typically assessment-based. We use several assessments on emotional intelligence and DISC, and so we kind of get a roadmap of the person, and then we're better able to coach from those assessments. So it gives us really a roadmap on the person and what their priorities are, what their style is and what their priorities are. So anyway, this piece that you have, preparing for 2024, obviously there's a line in here that adds, what does your time add the most value to the organization? So it's kind of set up for a company, but it doesn't have to be. So I just like to walk you through it. And I don't expect you to fill it out now, because it's the kind of thing that you have to really think about. And you may start to fill it out, and then you might need to live with it, like leave it on your desk or your table or in the kitchen so you can live with it for a while. The first thing is the one-word challenge. Does anyone here do that one word for the year, Jamie? And
drive.
Drive. Okay. And what does drive mean to you?
So it kind of came up in a couple of different perspectives. One was that I needed to stay in the driver's seat, because I had kind of gotten to a point where there were too many things pulling, and I wasn't necessarily, instead of steering, I was being steered, and I was not happy about that. And the other thing was doing what I needed to do to protect my drive, because I was spread very thin. And so, like, what do I need to cut back in?
Right, so establish boundaries around that so that you can in fact drive. And what is your word?
Being.
Being?
Rather than doing.
Being.
Because 3 weeks ago I retired. So now it's just about being and not having to always accomplish and reach goals. And in a sense also work on my spirituality. That's part of this.
Wonderful. Yeah, being. Great. So two great examples. My word this year is shed. Nothing is outstanding as being. It's shed, as in to get rid of. I'm 75 years old, and I have my mother's hope chest. And on Friday, I opened it up. I knew it was there, and I've opened it up in the past. But to find stuff from the 1930s that's in perfect condition, her wedding gown, I think, what do I do with this? I have to figure something out. And letters that my father wrote to her during World War II when he was in France and saying, well, we understand Hitler is coming across, blah, blah, blah. I mean, what do you do with this stuff? So it's not to be mean to purge, it's to say, okay, let's scan it, create books of it, give it to family members and whatever, but somehow or another to...
Most of your family members aren't going to want it.
Yes, none of the... I have one, thank God. I have a niece that said, I want to... She's an author, and so she was interested in the letters and the chronology of that. But you're absolutely right. So the question is, what do I do with a 1930 wedding gown? Yes?
You can scan it into Ancestry too, and that person who wrote the letter, so it's,
Okay, great.
Photos too, you can connect them to the,
Yes,
so that
and then
anybody
it's
else.
just on Ancestry for people to view.
Right.
public viewing, yeah.
right, wonderful. See, I learned something.
I just want to say, there's an organization that just now is in the process of moving to Carmel, but they take old wedding gowns and they take them apart and sew them into little clothing and bonnets and things for deceased babies.
Yes, I have heard about that. Yes, excellent, excellent. So, okay, so then after you get that word, and remember that word is kind of a mantra. Jamie, it helps you, right, to and keep that word close to you. When I think of that word shed, I may take something, it may be even a birthday card from a dear friend, and I kind of give it a kiss and put it in the recycling bin. So we just can't keep everything. But it's a mantra, it's a mirror, it's a motivator, and it keeps you centered on what you want for this year. So I do think you need to think about that, and think carefully about it, and have a word. And then, what do you want to accomplish? I think that even if you have recently retired, or whether you're working, you're not working, it doesn't matter. We still need to have goals, because otherwise we'll just, in my mind, if you ask me, we'll just languish. And we don't want to languish. We want to have goals. Now, the goals may be to spend more time with your grandchildren. That's fabulous. Then we can go from there to figure out how are we going to do that. So we're not building that much detail into this, but have those goals. Have what are the 4 most important things to you. And sometimes along with my word, for example, which is shed, I don't know what to do with jewelry. I don't wear jewelry anymore. I love the Benedictine sisters and Ferdinand, and I wear that. I don't wear much in the way of jewelry. And with arthritis, I couldn't get this ring off if I tried. So what do I do with that? But so one of my goals may be jewelry. I got to figure out how to share that with family members or do whatever I need to do. So it doesn't have to be always work-oriented. It can be some of the personal things you want to get accomplished. And then at the end, the one thing. What is the one thing that if you do personally, everything else falls into place? What's the one thing? So I can share with you what people have said to me. I have a physician that I coach, and it was really beautiful. He said to be present, and a lot of people say that, and it's almost to the point where I'm not so sure. You know, those working people will say to be present. And I said, well, what does that mean to you? He said, what it means to me is I am so driven to achieve what I want to achieve that I'm afraid I may not be present to what my children want to achieve. And I don't want to overshadow what they want to achieve by what I want to achieve. Now, his kids are 3, 6, and 8, something like that. They're still very young. But what a beautiful way to say that's what's important to me. Come on in, honey, and have a seat. And then the other thing someone may say, okay, I'm going to get on a soapbox now. They talk about exercise and that they do need to exercise. And people will say, I want to exercise 3 days a week, or I want to exercise 4 days a week. And come on in, thank you. So they want to do this 3 or 4 days a week. And here's the deal. That's really, really hard to do 3 or 4 days a week. It's really hard to do. In fact, I think it's almost impossible to be consistent. And so what I say to people, and I'll get on my soapbox, I'll say, well, let me ask you this. Do you get up in the morning and decide if you're going to brush your teeth or not? Are you gonna, I mean, are we going to,
Oh, that's great.
are we gonna brush our teeth every day? We get up and we brush our teeth typically, right? Good, excellent, excellent. So that's great. So we don't decide, oh, I think this week I'm only gonna brush my teeth 3 days a week. I got a busy week, and so I'm only gonna brush 3 days a week. No, what we do is we do it every day. So if exercise is important to you, you do it every day. Do you do it for 45 minutes or an hour? No, because there are days when you can't. But you know what? You can grab 15 minutes. You can grab 10 minutes. So you do it every day. There's a wonderful gentleman by the name of Clay Christensen who is no longer with us. He was a Harvard professor. And he says it's a lot easier to be 100%, think about integrity, 100% rather than 80 or 90%. Because 90%, you're always, should I or should I? Is that right or is that wrong? 100% is 100%. So think about if whatever it is, your one thing, make it 100%. A lot of people, it might be their health, their physical health, and then you can go on and describe what you mean by that. Okay, so that's this form. Take your time, fill it out, and then I also think it's important that you might want to share that with people. And speaking of sharing, Jamie asked me if I had more to pass out, and I said no. Yeah, we can just, I'll tell you what, I'll just take one. This is, we put together a number of articles on resilience. People talk a lot about resilience. And so we went through, and I have to tell you, most of what I source is either from McKinsey or Harvard. And Harvard did a great thing on resilience. And one of the things that it said about resilience, and there's a lot written about it now, it said there's 3 things that are important, and it's important for people as well as organizations. You have to have and it's at the bottom of this, you have to have a staunch acceptance of reality. If you really want to be, if you're a resilient person, you have a staunch acceptance of reality, which means you may need people around you to tell you you're smoking something, or, do you have a staunch acceptance of reality? Do you have a strong belief supported by strongly held values? I thought that the piece that Bob did this morning, and I have it here, I couldn't have asked for a better this is it, self-reflection, accountability, it's here, those values. Do you have these deep belief values? Do you know what they are? Now, I don't mean to be not nice about that, of course, but people don't always know what their values are. We know that we appreciate one another, and we're spiritual, and we're kind, types of things. But there are many, many, many values. And our values will drive us, whether we realize it or not. Freedom is one of my values. I want the freedom to go where I want to go, do what I want to do. If I want to go walk in the afternoon outside, I want the freedom to be able to do that. I don't want to be held back by anything, even as simple as taking a walk. So, and I can go more into values in a little bit. And an uncanny ability to improvise. This is another characteristic of organizations or people. Do you have an uncanny ability to improvise? So if you're resilient, if you're up against odds, do you have this ability to improvise? So what happens, this says here, resilience is a team sport. It truly is. So going around this circle, I think there are 8 words, whether it's a work surge or politics or pushback, vision, perspective, purpose, humor. And what you do is you pick 3 that are that resonate with you, that are really important. So one of mine was humor. People that help us, and you have to identify who are your go-to people in that category. Who do I go to for people that help me laugh at myself and the situation? I have a coworker that I love her because we laugh all the time. We were literally coaching two sisters that own a company. We were in a room a little bit larger than this, and she and I were, and the two sisters were arguing about who was right, and we're trying to mediate and coach both of them. And people kept coming into the room. And as people would come in, one of the sisters would say, "Get out, we're in a meeting now. Get out." And then another person would come in and they'd say, "Out, we've told you, wait outside. We'll tell you when we're ready." I mean, just like that, kind of angry, you know? And so this kept going on. And finally, someone came in and said, "The YouTube channel is on and everything is being recorded and shown live on YouTube." And we went, "Oh my God." So we laugh about that. So the first thing we did is, oh my God, what did I say? Did I say anything that I would not be proud of? No, we were fine and whatever. And so we laugh about that, I mean, continuously. So having those people that you can laugh with are critical. Another one for me is work surge. If I'm inundated with work, I need to have people that I could go to say, "Can you help me? Can you help me with this or that?" So as you go through this, pushback, people that help us find the confidence to push back and self-advocate. There are so many people that can't or have a difficult time self-advocating for themselves. And so you have to have people that go to that just push you on. Say, "You can do it. Come on, go stand up to him or her. Tell them what you think. Tell them you're happy or unhappy or whatever." Perspective, people that help us maintain perspectives when setbacks happen. When I coach my physicians, and they'll say, if surgery doesn't go well, if I'm in surgery and it doesn't go well, I need to have other surgeons that I can talk to that help me deal with that pain. So hang on to this and make sure you have people. And if there's an area that's important to you, purpose. People that remind us of the purpose or meaning of our work. And our work is not just a 9-to-5 job. Our work is what we do here, what we volunteer. And if we lose that sense of purpose, who do we go to have that purpose reinstated? So put 2 or 3 names in the areas that are important to you. That will help you with resilience. Let me stop at that point because I could go on to a million different things. And just, yes?
The very last sentence on the handout, can you give us an example of an uncanny ability to improvise?
Yes, I think of it more as, I guess I think of it a little bit more as an organization. Organizations that might have a difficult time achieving something, and so the example comes to my mind is kind of odd, but it's a Baptist Health is one of our clients in Kentucky, and they're one of the largest health systems in the United States. And they have employed physicians and they have independent physicians, ones that are employed by them as well as independents. And to a certain extent, you might think that they compete against these independent physicians because you see, if there's an issue, you could go to an independent physician or you could go to a Baptist Health physician. Well, Baptist Health, in a way to kind of bring those independent physicians closer, came up with the idea of selling them services. So what if we sell those physicians that are independent of us office management? What if we sell them how to do this or how to do that? What if we sell them insurance? What if we sell them, different? And so as these independent physicians sign up, they're still independent, but they have this allegiance to Baptist Health. And so consequently, referrals that might have gone elsewhere are going back into Baptist Health. So it's kind of an unusual way of improvising. Here's the problem. How do I work my way around it? But maybe you all can give me an example where you think you might have improvised to work your way around a problem.
I think I've worked in various areas in nursing, And one of the challenges was, at an early time in my life, was I did hemodialysis at a bedside. And you'd go to different hospitals depending on, so you had an area that you would cover. And you definitely had to improvise because you set up this dialysis machine to a sink in a patient's room. And so you had to kind of be a little bit of a plumber and pay attention to that. You also had to recognize that other people are going to be in and out of that room, nurses, doctors, family members. So you had to improvise and try to make it the best it could be for the situation that they were in. So I think, and that's just kind of carried over throughout nursing. I mean, and I'm sure everybody, I think teachers are major improvisers to the situations that they are involved in. But
Right. You don't have enough supplies. I was a teacher in Washington, D.C. years ago, and we had no supplies whatsoever. So you find a way of improvising. Thank you, because that triggered something in my mind. So when my kids were on a field trip, these are all inner city kids, and we had here we're on an art field trip with no supplies. Great. So you know what we did, and this field trip took us into the woods, which was unusual enough for them, but we stripped pieces of bark off the tree, and then we wove mats. So that's, I mean, no supplies. We stripped pieces of bark. We cut them with a scissor so that they were decent length strips, and we wove them and created mats, and they were stunning. So we just have to think, how can we improvise? But great question.
Would it be more to, like, if we were thinking about it in terms of our own lives, whether we were in a company or not, it would mainly, perhaps it could be like restated as maintaining a posture of flexibility, like any mindset.
Right.
Not having a fixed mindset.
The conversation that you and I had last week, and what you want to do, maybe improvising is doing it as a side gig until you felt you had the confidence or the financial ability to do it full time. So that could be improvising. Yeah.
So when we moved to Oregon, I just got my master's degree, so that was 2011, in education in curriculum and instruction. And I had taught all the levels from pre-kindergarten through 8th grade. Before we went, and Bob had a job that I did not upon going, and I knew I would need to work. But I spent this time, we decided that our kids were small enough that I needed to be there to help them transition, which we'd never done before. And I just was like, this is important. Bob thought so too. So for 6 months until my Oregon teaching license was effective, I taught. Catholic schools would take me to sub. But not all the public schools yet until like
Right.
licensing were in place, which I appreciate. And so I did some subbing for those like until December, and then felt, okay, I need to get something full-time here, or something is going to be the same every day, or I'm going to know where I go. On Sunday, I'm not going to be figuring it out as I go along. And so I started looking in like October, November, and there was a school district who decided, the parents in the school district decided, we don't want kids who are falling through the cracks to stay there. And they wanted to develop a program for people in kindergarten through 8th grade who were not successful in a traditional brick and mortar classroom. This was 2011-12. To give them what they need, the children, so they can continue and be able to be educated. Their parents would help, and I would help form that program for them until they were ready to transition back into a regular classroom. So there was like homeschooling mixed with education, mixed with online learning, which was very new at the time. And so there were a bazillion people applying for this job, and they called me after our interview, and the parents were involved in the interviewing. which I've never, ever been interviewed for a teaching position where parents were involved. So they called me the lead advisor, they hired me, and then they called me the lead advisory teacher, and I had to go like meet people and start up the program. And so that I started at halftime, and to be full-time, there had to be like 75 kids in the program. And so I spent like the next semester meeting people and working with 13 kids who had signed up for the program with their parents. And we actually built that program to like bursting at the seams. They would never let us get it further. Teachers came on staff, and we were all like covering different levels and different grade areas. And I look back at that and think, those children were well served. And when COVID happened, that program burst into like 500-600 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they got a building, and the person that, like, we started it, and the person that took my place, there was a principal, there were all kinds of other things. It was a big job, it was 2 jobs, and so I went back to the classroom, because nobody needs to be doing 2 jobs and getting paid for one. But I just admire the willingness of that school district to see the children that were having trouble and try to help them and their families. I've never seen it anywhere since, and I miss it. I miss that like flexibility that they had, because we had to be flexible with the kids. Some of them were like frozen with anxiety and couldn't get out of their car and come into a class.
Right.
You know, there were so many things, and these parents were trying so hard to figure it out and help support their children. And I thought, man, if we could do that and have that everywhere, people would be so much better. But that was like, often they would say like, we don't have no, like I would go and say, this kid needs this, to the district office people. And I worked directly with them, and they would be like, well, we don't do it that way. And I said, well, this program, nobody does. We might have to change our forms a bit.
Right.
Figure out how
But
to-
you were waiting to get employed, and you
Yeah.
weren't licensed yet, and you found these fabulous things to initiate.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, I didn't even know there was not a job like that. I didn't
Yeah.
know what I was waiting for, but like waiting in the wings, being consistent, every day doing what we needed to get by as a family, but then also just going, I don't know if I want to do the same thing I've always done, and being open to something new and different. And that has really formed me, like as an educator now, as someone who can go in and lead people to push back.
Great.
And help children
Great.
differently.
Any other examples or general questions?
Mine is not job related, but parent related. I just feel like being a mom, you kind of have to be resilient. When I see like, you know, we get to the park and the staunch acceptance of reality that there's been a diaper blowout.
Right.
And we'll have no more diapers. So we use wet paper towels from the bathroom and a pad to make it through, because we decided we're playing outside, which is a strong value.
Yes.
And the uncanny ability to improvise because it's cold, so we find dirty socks in the car and put them on their hands for gloves.
Right.
It just reminds me of like almost any event that I do with my kids.
Right.
You know, professionally it resonates too, but like just especially
Absolutely.
trying to make things work, it just feels like it's day-to-day life.
Right. Right. And you come back feeling good about yourself.
Yeah.
Not disappointed that we couldn't do what we wanted to do, but feeling good about how you improvised. You found solutions.
And a good example for your kids.
Yes.
Like an amazing example for your kids.
Right.
Yeah, like
Right.
we don't need to quit.
Yeah.
Because we don't have gloves.
Who else has maybe questions or might be in a transition or wondering how they're going to accomplish something?
Did I hear you say that your advice is to pick out?
You pick about 3 of them.
Okay,
Mhm.
because it depends on the individual's
Yeah, it depends
needs.
on,
Okay.
right, it depends on people that help us, to give us the confidence to push back and self-advocate. I don't need that. I mean, sorry, I don't. That's not, I mean, not that I don't, but it's not a priority for me. It's absolutely not a priority. But for others, people that help us see a path forward. That may be, for someone, really, really important. And so it is a team sport. You do need to have people like you have here, and that's why I think the great value of the work that Beth does is because you're connecting people. And even Bob talked about how the kids go up on the balcony and they do connect with one another. And so they form those relationships, and that's what gets us through the week. How about other transitions, questions, thoughts? Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a period of transition, like a very long period of transition, sort of, because I decided to stay home with my children, and now they're 10 and 13, 11 and 13, sorry, recent birthday, and just figuring out what I want to do next, because the job that I was doing was a job that required a lot of me. It was, I worked in the construction industry, managing projects, and I just really feel like that would eat up all my energy, all my time. It feels like when I do that job, my husband's a mechanic, and I feel like the car sits there and it waits for him, but sometimes it feels like the project is always going, so you're never really on vacation or anything. I thought, I really want to be able to be more present, so it's just been a really long process of figuring out what the next step will be.
You know, sometimes I think that we spend, I'm a big advocate of trying things. And I've had some people in the marketing field and in various fields who have said, I can't seem to find the marketing job I want. And what I'll say to them is, well, I know this company, and that company, and none of these companies need a full-time marketing person. But boy, could they use 2 people a day. Boy, could they use a week, rather, or 1 person a week, or 1 person for 2 days. And so instead of finding the job, and maybe this is also a part of being improvising, instead of finding the singular job, find 3 companies that maybe just need 1 day a week or 2 days a week. And inevitably, when I make that recommendation, they'll do that. I mean, they eventually do it. And then the great thing is, one of those companies needs more, and they need more, and it turns into a full-time position. So I saw this article the other day, and it said, stop waiting for the right time to make a change. And it says in here, when faced with crucial or life-changing decisions, such as a career change, we often ask ourselves, is now the right time? But the reality is the right time is a myth. And when we perpetuate it, we choose to live by default rather than by design. And we let fear rule. Now, I do think that there is a right time, because you do want to make sure your kids are settled, you know, and you want to make sure that that there's an after-school program that they could go into. I mean, you do have to think logically about certain things. I remember a dear friend of mine was a PhD, and she was talking about how to start your own company. And she said she used the 6-month rule. And she talked about this, and this 6-month rule, and I had just met her, and she was a PhD, and so I remember I went up to her, and I said, could you tell me more about this 6-month rule, because it must be something you studied at Northwestern University or whatever, and what is it, and how can I learn it, and whatever. And she laughed, and she said, oh no, I just added up all of my expenses, my rent and my, dry cleaning, whatever it might be, utilities, and I had enough cash to sustain myself for 6 months. That's all it was. She said it might have been 4 months, it might have been 9 months, but whatever it was. And she said, I knew that I had to get some income in 6 months. That's all I could sustain. So I do think you need to think about reality, but then you also need to kind of test the waters. People sometimes come and they'll say, well, I have a product and I'm very excited about it, and I'm going to create this brochure, and you see it's a perfect brochure and it describes everything about my brand new product. And I'll say, don't spend the time to do that. It's too much time. What you need to do is put it together pretty quickly. Go test it. Go talk to people. Find out what, and because you know what? The first 5 people you talk to, that printed thing that you made that was so perfect is going to change, because you're going to understand something that's important to them. I had a CEO once who told me that he was going to go on a retreat and he was going to decide what the values for his company was going to be. And I'm going to have 3 days in the woods, and I'm going to think, and I'm going to come out of this like, Moses with the tablets or something. And I'm going to come and have this list of values for my company. And I said, what an incredible waste of time. You know what? Let's just take a flip chart right now in 15 minutes, just put stuff up. Because it's not the values, it's can you live up to them. So one of the values that he put on there is we care for our employees. So a few months later, one of his employees was diagnosed with lung cancer. And I said to him, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to do nothing, because he was offered insurance and he opted out of our insurance program policy. So I'm not going to do anything. I said, go to your office and cross out that line that says we care for our employees, because you don't mean it. You know what the employees did? They gave their PTO. They contributed PTO to this person. So it's about living those values. When we can send you, before you leave, if you want to sign your name and put an email address, and maybe if there's something in particular you want, to find values, and it feels odd to talk to you all about values, because I believe your values are very, very strong to be a part of the Quaker organization. But there are several ways that we use to help people figure out values. And one way is a hero exercise. And if I ask someone who their hero is, they can be living, they can have passed, they can be a historical person, they could be a parent or something. So how about we'll do this? Take one volunteer. Does anyone want to volunteer to say, who is your hero? Someone that you respect, whether they're alive or they're no longer alive, or they're famous, whatever it might be. Is there anyone that would like to? Go ahead. Okay.
My father.
Your father. What was his name?
Florian.
Florian. Tell us about Florian. I want you to listen carefully, because I'm going to ask you what you heard. Tell us about Florian.
Talk loudly, Mary.
Okay. He went to World War II. He became, he met my mother there. She was a nurse, and then he was, he did a medical, he made a camp, they did a camp, and then they took care of people who were, destroyed, basically. So that was a start of his story that he didn't really share very much, because World War II was such a hard thing for these people to come home to and want to really talk about it. But my mom died, I was 5, there was 5 children, and she died relatively suddenly. And he was in the middle of going back to school. He was a dentist, but he went back for oral surgery because he did so much surgery in that area. And he just taught me values of all kinds of things. I mean, we were Catholic, and yet when I married later in life and got divorced, and he was like, he's a person who said, basically, don't worry about it, like God's wherever we are, and don't worry about it. And there was just the way he treated people, when you talk about humor, I worked in his office a few times in the summers, and my sisters all did, and what we loved about my father is the way he talked to the people who came into the office, and he made it funny sometimes, and so they're afraid to death to have oral surgery. I mean, we all know a dentist or anything, and anyway, so he was a good person.
Okay. So how could you describe Florian? How would you describe him, right? Is that his name? How would you describe him? Was he hardworking? Okay, what else?
Resilient.
Resilient?
Dedicated to his children.
Dedicated?
Determined.
Determined?
Visionary.
Visionary. So as we add these words, and if we had a group of we'd probably divide this group into smaller groups, but if we wrote these on a flip chart, they would be your values. So, and the humor piece, so you enjoy humor, someone that's hardworking, someone that's dedicated, someone that pursues education, he went back. I mean, so these are words that are values. And when we get a group of people together and we do this exercise, you'll see repetition, you'll see integrity, you'll see, and then it'll be, someone will say integrity and someone will be honesty, and we can coalesce those. We can say kind of the same. Can we pick one of the two words? So it is a way by saying who is your hero. A lot of people pick Abraham Lincoln. Why? Fair. Fair. He was fair. Martin Luther King. A lot of people pick Mother Teresa. You know, so there are values that they are important to them that they see in those people. Another way is an exercise called mountains and valleys. And essentially what you do here, it's a time chart. So if you're my age, you would do this in 10-year increments. If you're younger, you do it in 5-year increments. And what you chart is the low and the highs. So if this is a baseline, what was a low? And then how did you, and then on another page, how did you feel? And then highs. And how did you feel? What was a high? So inevitably, someone will say they graduated from college. So education is a value. And so they translate it. And I always worry about how they're going to translate these highs and lows into values, but it happens automatically. And so then you get this list of values because you've identified this was a hard time, this was a great time, a mountain and valley. Then you get those lists and you can then narrow it down to maybe 5 that are important. And when we talk about values, this is just a beginning list. We offer this up in case people, you know, have a little bit of a hard time thinking about, and we actually had a big discussion when we put this list together as to whether love was a value or not. And whether it was a value that an organization could talk about. And then we went to a school, and sure enough, love was one of their 5 values. So, but it's everything from, and the other thing is consistency with these values. So if someone is, if the value is collaboration, but someone values independence, might not work there, might not play, especially if you're on a smaller team. So it's another way to get at values, and it does talk a little, I mean, it really relates to what Bob said this morning about self-reflection, what are your core values, and honoring those core values. What else?
I wanted to share a story that Sally really helped me through about 15 years ago. So I have had a completely different career. I ran a national tax consulting firm. I'm a business person, an MBA. You know, I should not be doing this work I do now. But I had really become dissatisfied in my job. We had been acquired, and it just had become very difficult. But yet, I can't leave a job without having another job. And I remember Sally saying to me, sometimes you're up there and you gotta go take that swing on that, on that thing. And there's a net there. You're not gonna get killed. But I had to say, I'm gonna do it. I can't wait because my job was so intense. There's no way I could look for something else. And I knew I didn't want to be in that industry anymore. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really thought that I wanted to go work for a not-for-profit and be in maybe some kind of leadership role. And so it was through Sally's encouragement, and then I turned 50, so this was 14 years ago, I turned 50 and my mom passed away. And I'm like, I gotta do this. I don't wanna do this anymore. I'm not happy, it's not fulfilling. And so I interviewed at not-for-profits, never got a call, never even got an interview. And I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? And it was in a meeting for business here. I mean, I had raised my son in this meeting, had been a part of it. And the Christian education director had just walked out, just given no notice and just walked out. And people were panicked. And it was in a meeting for business that it's probably the only time I like heard an audible voice say, you're not doing anything, okay? Just do this on an interim basis. I'm like, I can't go ministry. That would have been the last thing I would have ever thought that I was gonna do. And I've been doing it now 11 years, and it's like the best thing that's ever happened. Just because I was in this group doesn't mean I can't go do something else. And then I ended up getting a master's in divinity, because I'm kind of one of those people who just like to keep going to school forever. So it's just been this rich experience. But if I hadn't taken that step, I had to go out on that.
Yeah. So when you talk about project management, you have a perception that project management is all-consuming. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So go out and talk to people. Talk to companies that are looking for project management. They might have one project, and it might just be something that they need 3-4 months worth. And it might be intense for 3 or 4 months, and then there could be a breather. Or it could be, look, here are the boundaries that I'm going to put around the work that I do, because I do have children. So boundaries are really important for us. The other thing is, and Jamie, you and I talked about this a little bit, I think it's really important, if you want to do something different from what you're doing, you need to start doing that. So for example, I was coaching a woman who has 2 master's degrees, and she's an executive administrator for a very senior person in an organization. And she said, I'm setting up meetings, I'm coordinating meetings. I have 2 master's degrees. I want to do strategic work. Now, her boss doesn't want her to go. He probably has 2 more years. And she knows everyone, and they've got a good working relationship, but she just doesn't feel fulfilled, and that's fair. And I said, well, look, look at your choices. Are you ready right now to leave? She said, I can't, because I'm so loyal to my boss. I just don't think, I know he would be really hard, have a difficult time without having me, so I'm too loyal to leave right now. But kept talking about how she was not being fulfilled. I said, then what are you doing from a volunteer standpoint? She said, well, I volunteer at my church. I said, that's great. What are you doing? She said, well, I'm just teaching a class. It's not very fulfilling, but at least I'm doing something. I said, then why don't you find an organization, and maybe it is your church, and why don't you get on the strategic planning committee of that church or that organization? Do it as a volunteer, but do it on the side. You can do that. Don't just sit there and say, I'm unhappy, and I can't leave him, so what am I going to do? And I'm not fulfilled. Go get fulfilled. Start something on the side, a side gig, if you will, or donate your time. And then when he does leave, you can go back to the organization and say, I don't want to be an executive administrator anymore. I've done this strategic work. Here's this not-for-profit, that not-for-profit, this not-for-profit, where I've led their strategic committees. And you'll have a better shot at something in your organization, or at that point be more comfortable about leaving. But the point is, you can't just stay in, it's like quicksand, can't stay there. You've got to do something. Inertia is the enemy. Inertia is the enemy. It'll create depression and everything. So start by doing something, and then you'll get that ball rolling. What else? Yeah.
It's so hard when you're looking at the whole calendar, like 2024, and when you're setting your intentions and you put in the calendar what you're going to do, and then things just slough off, and then the next thing you know, you're sitting and watching TV or just not. It's like having the motivation to do. It's about the integrity of what we talked about. Just having the motivation to do what's on the calendar and get it done. Like if you have a project for these 2 hours, and you
Right.
set that time. And then someone calls and says, let's go to lunch. Well, I'm going to go to lunch.
Right.
So that's been my big issue, is that I just get stuck moving things in the calendar to the next week, and then I'm behind. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's really,
You
a
know-
lot of it is kind of in my head too. Like,
Mhm.
am I putting too much on the calendar? You know, it's like, I'm not an organizational person. I'm more
Mhm.
go by my feelings or go by, you know, I'm not
So
super driven.
is it procrastination?
Yeah, probably, procrastination,
So,
yeah. I'm a
there's
light
a-
hoarder, so I have stacks of things that I need
There's
to
a
do, you know.
TED Talk on procrastination, and I watched it the other day. If you all are familiar with TED Talks, I watched it the other day, and actually a lot of people love it, and they thought it was funny because the guy's kind of funny, and he talks about he had a year to do a thesis, and he knew that if he spent so much time every day, and then months would go by, and now he had to spend more time, and then more months went by, and then he had to do everything in 72 hours that he was supposed to do in a year type of thing. And people laugh and laugh. I hated the talk, to be honest with you. But he did at the end talk about that's not the sad part of procrastination. The sad part of procrastination, he said, is when we want something big for ourselves, like we want a career change or and we don't have the courage to do that. He called that procrastination. I didn't like the TED Talk because I guess I would say I will say I am not a procrastinator. I make a list of what I'm going to do, and I accomplish that. And so if a friend calls and says, and maybe on my list I was going to do something from 12 to 2, but a friend calls, am I going to go to lunch? Yes, I'm going to do the same thing. But I will also say I will not go to bed until I've made some headway here. Or I'll say, I'll trade off. I can go to lunch today, but next week when we were going to do something, I have to, maybe I can, let me see if I can get through my list. This morning when I got up, I've had on my list, my grandson wore a suit to school, and he had a white button-down shirt, and it's probably the only thing that needs to be ironed. And I have had iron this shirt on my list, and I was like, damn it. Today, I am going to iron that shirt before I brush my teeth because I'm going to get that shirt ironed. I know I'm going to brush my teeth, but I'm going to get that shirt ironed. And let me just tell you, I feel so good. And sometimes I might know I have something like that I want to do, but it didn't hit my list. Well, I'll go down and I'll write there, ironed shirt, just so I can cross it off, So it's discipline. And I would say your word for the year might need to be discipline. Because when you go like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go to lunch. Or I can't tolerate TV because I feel like if you can do TV, if you can do something with it, I believe in television by zone. There's a TV in every room of my house because I'm never sitting. I want to catch the show from place to place. But discipline may be what you need to do, and then focus on celebrating how well you did at the end of the day. I mean, I have one beer every day at the end of the day. I'm a beer drinker. Beth is too, right? We're beer drinkers. Well, you drink wine. I don't drink wine. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I have that beer or that moment of reflection, and I'm like, oh, I got the stuff off my list. So make a list. Maybe discipline needs to be your word, and commit to it. Because what you're committing to, at the end of the day or the end of the month, at the end of the year, you look at the calendar and you're not happy. And the other thing to do is don't waste 5 minutes. All those 5-10 minutes, oh my God, you can get so much done. just have that list of 5, 10-minute, 15-minute projects. I don't care if it's emptying the dishwasher, loading the dishwasher. It's like, I mean, I keep going.
Sally, maybe your word should be relax.
I had that word 1 year, and I hated the year. I hated the year. But I mean, I do relax. I have that beer at the end of the day, and you know what? When I watch my grandson, I am so in. I am all in, and I'm very, very present. I watch those games. I can't even sit. I watch him play basketball or soccer. And the other thing is, I get where other things come up. I have my list, and he'll say to me, I'm studying the solar system. And I got it taken care of. I've got a project here on the solar system, and then I take it out and the paints are dry. And I go, oh God, now I've got to go to Michael's or something. And yeah, shoot up to Michael's, get the paint, come back. And, but so I do allow time, or I let those things take over my list, but I'm still pretty consistent on working that list. Yes?
I was just, what you said, Kathy, made me think of the word that I picked. I accidentally, this year, when we were at Jamie's, we'll get together about goals for the year.
Compass,
Yeah, last year, what we accomplished or what we felt about our life. And then what we were gonna plan for the coming year. And I said, I was trying to say intentionality, but I said intentional. And then I realized, well, the people laughed, they're like, that's a real, but it wasn't a real word. And I was like, oh no, I can't have that word. And then I thought, you know what, I need that word, because it's intentional, because I'm very intentional. But am I having somebody hold me accountable for the things that
Right.
I'm intentional about? And so that discipline, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
I need somebody to check on me. And I need to be proactive about that person. Are you doing what's on your list, or are you? And so that like accountability that you talked about.
I think that's
super
great.
important.
And you know, get an accountability partner. It goes back to resilience is a team sport. Get an accountability partner that's going to help you with that.
Accountability buddy.
Yes, yes. And you know what? A lot of people do that. They put words together. And maybe they want momentum and something else, and they put them together. That's a great thing to do.
It's easy not to do my intention when nobody else knows about it.
Right.
And then just go, oh, I wasn't planning on doing that. And then later I'm disappointed because I know
Right.
what my intention was, and I didn't get it.
So if you can find someone that you can share, here's what I want to accomplish, here's what I want to do this month, this week, this year, whatever, and let them check in on you, and you can check in on them, even from a workout standpoint. All of that is good to help keep you motivated. Yeah.
For Kathy, I'm more like you, the procrastinating type thing. And this contradicts, I believe, a bit of what you're saying, but I think it's very important to do what works for your kind of mindset. I don't know why our minds are wired differently, but I find it, and it's not like I'm getting everything done I want to, but I do better when I actually program into my day just some dallying time. Like I've noticed that I like to start the morning reading articles in AP and BBC as if I'm going to be interviewed by someone I'm not. I don't need to read that stuff, but I just like to do that. So, but I'll tell myself, okay, I can waste time on my phone until this time. And then I make lists on the notes in my phone, and I used to do it day by day, but now I'll do like Thursday or Friday. I'll put a list of things I want to get done one of those 2 days. I find that just having
I think that's
flexibility
fabulous.
helps.
And you're not wasting time in the morning when you're doing that because it's essential for you. I don't view that as a waste of time if you're checking to see that the world is still there and what's going on.
But it can, if I do it beyond a certain time, I'm just reading the same articles over again. So that's why I give myself
Right,
a limit.
so you put a limit around it.
Yeah.
You know, I love to walk. And the other day I thought to myself, I do 3 things really. I work, I walk, and I watch. my grandson plays sports. And so, but I love to walk, and I pretty consistently get a 3-mile walk in. And during that time, honestly, I don't listen to books. I mean, the easiest thing would be to do books on Audible, of which, you know, I pay every month for an Audible subscription and kind of give the books away, gift them every month. But I like to walk, and that's when I let it, maybe that's when I relax, because I'm letting it out. I'm with nature. Ideally, I hate walking on a treadmill. I do if I have to, but it's being outside and just breathing. And no matter how cold it is, it can be in the teens, you can still bundle up and stuff like that. So I love to walk, and that's that time that I can just, and I don't want stuff coming in. I don't want, even if it's Brené Brown, who's wonderful, I don't want to hear that, you know. I just want it to go out, and I kind of sort out my day and my feelings. So, and that's maybe my private time, and so have your private time to do that.
It's called being.
Being, absolutely.
I live by lists. It was the only way I could keep myself organized. I have found one of the most marvelous things about retirement, though, is I gave myself permission to accomplish absolutely nothing, if that's what I wanted to do that day. You know, I have, you know, things that I could never account to somebody else for, like, what did you get done today? I read it.
That's
I read it.
fabulous.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, the house is not clean, stuff isn't done, I don't care. And
Right.
I've got nobody to, I mean, my husband, I try to keep the place nice for him, but I have nobody to account for anymore. That's the best thing about retirement. I don't owe an explanation for a minute of my time to anybody. And I love it. And I realized the other day, I had gone 7 weeks without making a list, and I counted.
That is an accomplishment, and you should be proud of the fact that you're comfortable with that,
Yeah.
and that just that freedom of being able to sit to read.
Yeah, I pet my cat, I watch my birds at the bird feeder, I chat with friends online, and like, it was a full day.
Right.
So goals are good, but sometimes we have to stop and think, who is setting our goals for us?
Right, and it's a goal of yours to enjoy your time.
Yeah.
Well, you're healthy enough to do that,
Exactly.
and that's good, all good.
Well, and I think goals get a bad, like everybody thinks of a goal as something to do, but really, I mean, it's, I think of them more as intentionalities, like, than necessarily specific goals. Like, that's an intentional way to live your life.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost more important to think in terms of intention, and I think sometimes goals, for people who are not goal-oriented, is like
A bad word.
feels like
Yeah.
an obligation
Yeah.
Right.
versus an active choice
an
you
imposed
are
thing.
making. Yes, versus something, yeah.
But my career was a very imposed intense.
Yeah.
and
Right.
that's why
Well,
I think I've gone completely off the deep
Yeah.
end the other direction,
Yeah.
but it's okay.
It is okay. It is okay. And I think you're right. Goals have, and a goal doesn't have to be that you're going to do something. A goal can be to be.
Yeah.
You know, one of my goals is to have time for my grandson, for the things he wants to do. And then I look at my list and I do say tomorrow. Because right now, I know that this time with him is limited. And there'll be plenty of time to get done the stuff I want to do. Now, if he doesn't have anything or he's preoccupied, then I can rush and do something I want to do. But a goal can be to be as well as to accomplish something.
I love your reward at the end of every day, because I was just saying too, like, for some reason, I need to have something to look forward to that, like when I do the thing, like at the end of the day, I can sit back and be like, and my dad did that every day. He is a farmer, and there was a beer every day.
Well, and I have my beer with Lester Holt on the news. So, and there are There are times when I can't be with Lester, but
I'm sure he wish he could have a beer with you.
I know. But he goes on, and the hard part is the news is it's always been awful. And I have to make sure my grandson is preoccupied or has headphones on so he doesn't hear the god-awful stuff that's going on in the world. But I'll sit there with my beer and Lester Holt, and it's a good day.
I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
very simple desires.
My dad after some baling of hay.
Yeah.
I sat down and had something.
Yeah. Y'all probably need to go. You've got the resilience as a team sport. I can pass this around and people can, if there's anything in particular you're interested in, and if we have an article, we'll share it, we'll send it to you. Here's a piece, it's old, but I loved this fellow who started this. It's called the Eagle Institute, and this is dated 2002. But I thought you might like it because here, when he looks at connecting the dots and rating yourself, he's saying, how would you rate yourself financially, spiritually, health, wellness, relationships, emotional, intellectual? And one is not good. What you want is a full rounded circle, ideally. Now, if you are maybe really high in one area and low in another, then you need to kind of beg, borrow, and steal from one area to get to the other. So you might want to spend more time on relationships. Maybe intellectual is what? Reading, but and your reading is a 10, but your relationships are a 4, then maybe you need to transition some of that time over. And he asks good questions, so we made copies of this for you. What are your goals, using that word, good, bad, or indifferent, in those areas? And then you sign it and you date it. The other thing he lists here are what energizes you and rejuvenates you. What do you believe your God-given talents are? When are you most at peace? And how would you describe the last 18 months? How would you like to describe the next 18 months? So it's just a thought piece. You can take one of these and it'll help you think through what you might want to, we could just pass those out, what you might want to accomplish. So I love being with you, and I hope that, hope you got something out of it, and I hope you'll work with one another to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. Whether it's to relax more, which I probably should. I'll get Beth. Beth will have to help me relax. It doesn't come naturally. So thank you.
Sally coming in and talking to us.